B'shus de Rosh Hashiva, and let me also start on a very personal note. So you just heard the Rosh Hashiva Rabbi Isaacson speaking about the schus of spending some time with me, and I had the schus of having a very special driver. Not many people have a Rosh Hashiva as a driver, and that was my special schus. And Rabbi Isaacson, the feelings are mutual. And even though it's been quite a few years since you drove me around, since the beginning of COVID, but the relationship is not diminished at all. And I cherish our relationship. And maybe we'll start the shit again, and I hope you'll still be available. This is an interesting yeshiva, and you have very special Ramim and Merbitzei Torah in the yeshiva, most of them retirees. So I know Rabbi Apfel very well, and I need to get used to changing, the titles. Dr. Apfel morphed into Rabbi Apfel, and Stevie Glantz is no longer Stevie. Probably he's Rabbi Glantz in the yeshiva. So this is such an inspiration, having accomplished people in many different fields. And I think this is something for the boys to think about. Successful and accomplished doctors, businessmen, who at some stage feel, I want to come back to yeshiva, because nothing compares to just sitting and learning Torah in yeshiva. And to me, that seems to be like a huge inspiration. So I discussed with Rabbi Apfel, should I retire and come to the yeshiva in Mevaseret? But I don't think that would be so much of an inspiration, because I never was a doctor. I'm not a successful businessman. I'm not a lawyer. So I don't think that'll mean that much to the Talmidim if I retire and come to teach Torah here. But anyway, it's been years since I was in the yeshiva, and I'm very happy to be back again. And I am inspired that in these difficult days, I am associated with various different yeshivas. And so many of the American yeshiva boys left Israel, left Eretz Yisrael, they went back to America, and yeshivas are depleted. And I'm so moved that all of you decided, we're not going anywhere, we're in Eretz Yisrael, this is where we should be. And we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will watch over us. As long as we learn Torah, then we should feel safe and confident in Eretz Yisrael. So these are difficult times for every Jew in the world, and especially Yoshvei Eretz Yisrael. We are in the midst of a war, terrible war. And what we experienced on Simchas Torah is something we never thought could happen in Eretz Yisrael. More than 1,000 Jews were just killed, murdered, butchered. Anoshim v'taf. We haven't seen anything like this since the Holocaust. So profoundly tragic. And since then, hundreds of soldiers have lost their lives since Simchas Torah. And just yesterday, 11 young Jewish soldiers were killed. So these are very challenging times. And I think each and every one of us needs to ask, what is my duty? What am I required to do? We are all called to arms. Every Jew and every yeshiva boy. Everybody needs to be part of this effort. How? So Baruch Hashem, we all have the schus of sitting in Beis Medrash. That doesn't mean that we are exempt from service. We need to serve in our way, but we need to serve. And we need to be part of this war effort. And I tell yeshiva boys, as much as you learned up today, you need to learn more. Kids your age are in Gaza right now, and they don't have an afternoon break from 2 to 4 to take a long nap. And if they don't have that, neither should you. Neither should you. Your Torah is essential. We all need as much Torah as we can get. And we firmly believe in Divrei Chazal, Masechet Makis, Oim des Hoyer Agleinu b'Melchama b'Schus Shar Yerushalayim Shoiskim b'Torah. But that means you serve. And you need to make an effort, just like all the others are called upon to make a special effort. How much Torah does one need to learn? Could anybody define how much Torah does one need to learn? So probably the most fundamental source is the pasuk. Lo yomesh sefer ha-Torah hazeh mepicho v'hogisu bo yomam v'layla. Who knows where this pasuk is found? Where is this pasuk? Bereishis Shemois vayikro b'midbar devarim. Where is this pasuk? Which perek? Perek Aleph and Sefer Yoshua. The very first perek in Divrei Nevi'im, which emphasizes the importance of this pasuk. How do we define Yomam V'Layla? Is it all day and all night, or some of the day and some of the night? Seems to be a machlokes between two of the greatest Tanoim, Reb Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Shmuel and Brochas Daf Lamed Hey. So in Brochas Daf Lamed Hey, the Gemara says, could the interpretation be a literal one, all day and all night? Well, there's another pasuk, which is in Torah's Moshe, which has precedence. So you need to plow, you need to sow, you need to harvest, there's so much work to be done. And the Torah says, "V'osafto deganecho." So how could one learn all day and all night? So Rabbi Shmuel says, we can't interpret this pasuk literally. It means some of the day and some of the night. Hanheg behem minag derech eretz, which means they need to provide for the families, for the communities. You need to work, you need to harvest the fields, and whatever time is left, you learn Torah. Reb Shimon bar Yochai disagrees, and he says, Cherish b'shas cherisha, zereya b'shas zereya, koitze b'shas ktsira, Torah matahei oleo. So when are you going to learn Torah? Bezman sheyaso eloisen retzoinoi shal makom, the Navi says, va'amdu zorim ura'u tzoinchem. Strangers will come, and they will take care of your flock. If you learn Torah, yes, v'ogisa b'yom v'laylo is devarim kechsavam, all day and all night. That's the opinion of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. And what is the halach? The Gemara says, harba, also Reb Shimon v'loyolsa b'yodam. The Marsha, the Netziv, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, and many others say, Chazal stress, harba also Reb Shimon v'loyolsa b'yodam. It's not a derech for the multitudes. It's not a derech for the many. It is a derech for the few. And those few that really could dedicate all their lives, all their resources, all their energies, whatever they have, for Omer Torah, yeah, their call is all day and all night, but all the others, some of the day and some of the night. Very first Mishnah, Masechet Peah, and we recite this Mishnah every day in the morning. Ere devorim she'ein lehem shiur, Talmud Torah. The Bir Agra, the Gon Shnois Eliyahu, that's his Perish on Mishnah, is the Bir Agra. And this Mishnah quotes Rabbi Shmuel. Hanig behem minig derech eretz. And that is why Talmud Torah ein lo shiur lo lamala velo lamata. Sometimes it's all day and all night. Other times, some of the day and some of the night. To some people, it would be all day and all night. To others, it will be some of the day and some of the night. And that's pshat in the Mishnah, Ere devorim she'ein lehem shiur. So the Gon seems to agree that halachic Rabbi Shmuel, because that is his pshat in Stam Mishnah. The Mishnah gives the beginning of Peh, which l'chayre is halacha psuka, because it's a Stam Mishnah. Both Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai seem to contradict their own teaching in Menachos Tzadik Tes. In Menachos Tzadik Tes, Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and this is a fascinating phenomenon which I don't know how to explain, but many sources in Shas, it is Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan couldn't have known Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, because Rabbi Yochanan was the first generation of Ameroim. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was far before the end of the days of Tanoim. So Rabbi Yochanan obviously was Mishamish Talmidim of Rabbi Shimon, and this is very common in Shas. Menachos Tzadik Tes Amud Beis, Rabbi Yochanan quotes Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Afilu lo ykoreh la posek echad shachris posek echad arvis. Kriya Shema shachris v'arvis, a person is yoitza, v'hogisu bo yomam v'layla. The very same posek we deal with in Brachas Lamed Hey, we find once again in Menachos Tzadik Tes. And it is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that says, Kriya Shema Shachris V'Arvis, or in other posuk Shachris V'Arvis. And that seems to be a minimal requirement, while in Brachas Lamed Hey he says, no, you can't even harvest your fields. Because you need to learn Torah all day and all night. And at that very same Daf Menachos, Shoel ben Doma ben Achoisoi, Rabbi Shmuel es Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel had a nephew, obviously a bright boy, and he asked, Kiganani, Shalamadati Kol HaTorah Kol, I finished Shas, I finished the Yerushalmi, I would like to learn some Greek philosophy. Very keen interest, what the early philosophers have to say. Ma'ani lilmed chochmi avonis. And his uncle Rabbi Shmuel says, V'ogisu bo yomam v'layla ksiv. If you could find any time that is lo yoim v'lo layla, then you could learn Greek philosophy. Obviously, he won't get very far. He's not going to be a major philosopher. Maybe he's going to touch Socrates. I don't think he's going to get to Plato or to Aristotle. If all the time he has is bishul she'enoi lo yom v'lo layla, and that is Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Shmuel and Brocha says some of the day and some of the night. Rabbi Shimon and Brocha says all day and all night. And in Menachos, Rabbi Shimon says, it's enough if you say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, morning and night. You're Mekayim the mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel says you have no time. All day and all night need to be dedicated to one endeavor, and one only. And that is Vogisa Bo Yomam V'Layla. So how do we understand the contradiction? So 2 points I would like to make. I think the Machloikes in Brochas Lamed Hey is not about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. It is about Derech Eretz. It's not about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. And I would like to assume that Rabbi Shmuel was no less a masmid than his friend Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. And Talmud Torah is no less precious to Rabbi Shmuel than it is to Rashbi. The question is, Hayim soimchen al haneis? What is the normal mahalach of a Jewish nation, of a Jewish people? Are we all expected to be scholars? Are we all expected to learn Torah all day and all night? And how will we have parnasa? Who will feed our communities? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, if you will all learn all day and all night, then in a miraculous way, strangers will come from the end of the world, and they will take care of all our needs. Ukedivrei hanavi v'amdu zorim ura'u tzoinchem. Rabbi Shmuel says, no, ein soimchen al hanes. That is a dream that will be fulfilled at the end of days. It's not a platform. It's not a program. It's an unrealistic program. Haneg behem minig derech eretz. So the machlokes Rashbi and Rabbi Shmuel and Brochas Lamedei is about Hilchos derech eretz. It's not about Hilchos Talmud Torah. We're not supposed to starve to death. We need to provide for our children, for our families, for our communities. The machlokes is in Hilchos derech eretz. Rabbi Shmuel says, ein soimchen al hanes. I think the Ikar machlokes is not in the interpretation of Ogisa b'yoyim v'laylo. The machlokes is the interpretation of v'amdu zorim u'ra'u tzoinchem. Rashbi feels that's a program. That's your program. And if you will all learn Torah all day and all night, that will be fulfilled. It's a promise of the Navi, b'shem Hashem. And Rabbi Shmuel says, no, it's a utopian dream. It's something about la'osid lavoi. It's not a practical program. Haneg behem minig derech eretz. So what about the machlokes in Menachos Tzadik Tes? We explained Brochas Lamed Hey. Menachos Tzadik Tes, I think Rabbi Shmuel says, derech eretz, yes. Chachmei Yevonis, no. Derech eretz, yes. Because you're human beings and you need to provide for your families. You need to have parnasa. So on Dr. Apfel, till mid-age, spent most of his time treating patients, 100% legitimate. Not only because treating patients is a mitzvah, because you need to provide for your family. And when Stevie Glantz, also known as Rabbi Glantz, spent many years doing business, that was legitimate. Providing for the family, giving tzedakah. And that is Haneg behem minig derech eretz. However, Chachmei Yevonis, Rabbi Shmuel says no. Chachmes HaTorah. Why do you need any other Chachma? No. V'ogisa b'yoyim v'laylo. When you're not doing parnasa, you need to learn Torah. And Rashbi would probably point to the first Mishnah in Masechet Peah. And he says, when you can, you need to learn all day and all night. As I said in Brochas Lamed Hey. But sometimes, the minimal requirement is Posek Echad Shachris, Posek Echad Avis, Kriyas Shema Shachris Vavis. Each and every one of us knows that not all days are the same. Not all people are the same. So a young man, his wife is in labor. He needs to take her to the hospital. First baby, they're all in tension. He's sitting out there in the waiting room. He can't really learn right now. He doesn't have a Gemara. All he finds in the waiting room is a Tehillim. So does he need to learn all day and all night? Well, doesn't have either the nerve to do so. And there are so many days in which you just can't learn. You know, you're moving. Anybody that moved from one house to the other knows what a busy day that is. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says exactly what the Mishnah says in the beginning of Peah. Ele dvorim she'elem shia. When you could, it's all day and all night. But the minimum, which you can never escape, is Vogisa b'yoyim v'laylo. Posek echad shachris, posek echad arvis. So in a practical way, when I am asked, so what is the requirement? How much does one need to learn? There's a beautiful story. I said 1,000 times, and I hope HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give me the time and the koyach to tell the story another 10,000 times. Rabbi Yosef Eliyahu Henkin was the gadol in America before the Igros Moshe became the Igros Moshe, the Moshe Feinstein. And he was a giant, Harav Henkin. A giant in Torah, a giant in Chesed, and a real tzaddik. And when he gave a hesped when the Chazon Ish passed away, he told this story. I first met the Chazon Ish, we were both young Avreichim, in a little town in Russia called Stoivzi. The Rav of the community was Rav Sorotskin. I don't remember his first name. And I came to see the Rav, And a young man came out of the Rav's room, and I asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am the son of the Rav of Kosovo, and my name is Karelitz." And I asked him, "So what do you do?" And he says, "We run a store." The wife of the Chazon Ish ran a shop. I asked him, "Do you learn?" And he said, "When I have time, I learn." And obviously, he had a lot of time. So he told me, "When I have time, I learn." So, "What are you doing by the Rav?" And he said, "The Rav called me. And when the Rav calls, you come." That's the end of the conversation. Shoyel Ke'inyan, Meishiv Kahalocha, short, precise, not one extra word. But I think this sentence, "When I have time, I learn," is the clearest definition of mitzvahs Talmud Torah one can ever give. How much does one need to learn? When you have time, you need to learn. How do we define when you have time? Shnoi Selio, the Bira Gro that I quoted a few minutes ago in the first mission of Paya, the Gro says, Rabbi Shmuel says, Hanig ben minig derech eretz, because derech eretz is a mitzvah. And like any other mitzvah, she'i efshal asoisa al yedei acherim, overrides Talmud Torah. So the Gaon says, why is it legitimate to work? Because providing for your family is a mitzvah. And any mitzvah that you cannot perform by others overrides Talmud Torah. Just like you need to put on tefillin, you need to make Kiddush and Havdalah, you need to be Noitel Lulav and sit in the sukkah and say Kriya Shema like any other mitzvah which overrides Talmud Torah. The same applies to derech eretz. That's a big chumrah. Is it a mitzvah to become rich? I don't think so. The mitzvah is to provide for your family. So according to the Gaon, Yoser Mekedei Chayov would be somewhat of a problem. Rabbi Meir Simcha, many years later, was somewhat more realistic than the Gaon, than the Gra. And Rabbi Elchanan as well in Kovetz Ha'oros and Yevamis. Rabbi Meir Simcha knows a Meir Hilchos Talmud Torah. And Rabbi Meir Simcha says it also depends on Nefesh Adam. As Rosh Hashivas, we know not all our kids are the same. We cannot expect all our children to be major scholars and great teachers of Torah. We do expect all of them to learn Bas Moda, especially in the formative years when you're sitting in yeshiva. This is so important, but ultimately, not all of them would be sages and great teachers of Torah. So the Meir Simcha says, how much one needs to learn depends on so many different factors. It depends on your nefesh, on your abilities, on your personality. It depends on your panosa. Do you have a big family or a small one? Are you in high tech or are you in manual labor? Are you doing well in panosa or not? And I say, the definition, you need to learn when you have time. Some activities are important and essential and legitimate even though they cannot be defined as mitzvahs. Yes, a father is required to teach his children Torah. But a normal father is also required sometimes to play with your kids. Is playing with children a mitzvah? Well, if you check Sefer HaMitzvahs, Rambam Ramban, Alochas Gedolos, Smag Smak, you won't ever find a mitzvah play with your kids. But every normal father and every normal child knows that it is something we should be doing from time to time. Teach your kids Torah, sometimes take them for a tiyul, spend time. You need to spend time with your spouse, with your wife. Is it a mitzvah? It's not defined as a mitzvah, but it is something which decent, normal people do and should be doing. So whenever you are engaged in something that is important, essential, and legitimate, you're put up from Talmud Torah. But my advice to all of you, when a Kodesh Baruch Hu will ask you the same question Rav Henkin asked the Chazon Ish. Did you learn? Don't dare to say, when I had time, I learned. No, that's not going to be a good answer. Because up there in the heavens, they have a video clip of every day. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, really? When you had time, you learned? Let's see. Let's check it out. And then on the screen, one day after the other, and you will be very uncomfortable in your seat. And you'll regret that you ever said, whenever I had time, I learned. So don't say that. But try. That is the halacha of mitzvahs Talmud Torah. You need to learn when you have time. So Rabbi Shmuel says, Hanik ben minig derech eretz, there's no other way to go about it. You need to provide for your family. That's your chiyuv. But you want to learn Greek philosophy? No. Learn Torah. Bo gisu bo yomam v'layla. So choshev talmidim. What have I said up to this moment is, how much do you need to learn in days of peace and serenity? We are in days of war, and we are called upon to go beyond, above and beyond what we are expected to do in normal days, because these aren't normal days. Klal Yisrael is in sakana, and young boys are dying out there. So we need to be proud that we're learning Torah. Israel never wins wars just by means of might. Because we are not a people of nature. We are a people of miracles. By course of nature, we shouldn't be here. By course of nature, we should have been 3 pages in history books. Somewhere between ancient Troy and the Roman Empire, there would be 2 or 3 pages in which kids would learn in high school. There was a people, they called themselves the Jews. They claimed to be descendants of the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And they rose to prominence so-and-so BC, and they were diminished in so-and-so AC, and that would be normal history. We shouldn't have been around. And the fact that we are around is unprecedented and unparalleled in history. 300 years ago, Rabbi Yaakov Emden wrote in the introduction to his famous siddur, Shari Shemayim, Chai Roishi, the fact that we exist, Se Echad Ben Shivim Ze'evim, is a nes. Gadol hanes hazeh b'yeinai, yoisem ekol hanisim shenasu laviseinu b'Mitzrayim, al hayam u'be'eretz Yisrael. The existence of Klal Yisrael, the fact that we are around, is a greater nes than the 10 plagues, Kriyas Yamsuf, and Ma'amad Har Sinai. And he wrote that 300 years ago. What would he write today? What have we been through in the past 300 years? So many challenges, spiritual, physical, and ultimately the horrific Holocaust, the Shoah, the greatest human tragedy in the history of the world. Nothing compares to the Holocaust, ever. And we're doing quite well. Well, we should have been doing better, but we're doing quite well, growing in numbers, growing in closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, growing in Torah. So this is a miracle. Everything about us is miracles. We win war by miracles. Don't get me wrong. Yes, we need the best army in the world. We need the most advanced equipment in the world. We need the best technology. We need soldiers that have more motivation and dedication than any others in the world, and I believe that we have all this. But all this is not enough. Because Chazal teach us, and this is a joint effort of all segments of Klal Yisrael. So when many of our children are out there, south and north, fighting, waging war, sacrificing their lives, we are required to do more in the Beis HaMedrash. Twice in Shas, Megillah Daf Gimel, Sanhedrin Mem Dalet, Chazal tell the story of Yeshua ben Nun, Melchemes Mitzvah, Kibush Eretz Yisrael. And Yeshua takes a walk. We don't know why. Was it his boidedis? Was he a Breslev Chosid? Or he just took a walk to air out his head? We don't know. And he sees a general, a commander, and he's baffled. And he asks, Halonu at im litzorenu? I don't know you. Yeshua ben Nun probably knew the commanders of his army. His uniform was strange, so he asks, are you friend or foe? Halonu at im litzorenu? And the commander answers, Loi kisar tzva Hashem anochi. I'm not a mortal. You're mistaking. I'm not human. I'm an angel, and I was sent with a message to you. And Yeshua asks, what's wrong? What's the message? And he says, Bitul Torah. How does Yeshua respond? Ve'yolen b'toichu eimek, malamid shalan ba'umko shel halacha. And I asked, why umko shel halacha? And why just not learn Torah? I don't recall being there when this encounter took place. But if I would be Yehoshua, I would say, Mr. Malach, or Reb Malach, maybe you're a great Malach. I'm not a maven on Malachim, but I don't think you're a Boki B'Shas, because in Soita Daf Mem Dalet, the Gemara clearly says the Melchemes Mitzvah, Oisig Mitzvah Potam and a Mitzvah, so we're Potam from Talmud Torah. This is a bitter war. We're waging war all day. The troops are so tired. So what are you talking about Bittul Torah? What did the Malach say? I think the Malach said, Yoshua, you don't get it. You don't understand what's going on. Look at me. The Malach says, look at me again. Open your eyes. If I would be sent Mishomayim, Litboya el boino shel Torah, Kodesh Baruch Hu would dress me up with a frock and a Hamburg, like most of the Rosh Hashivas are dressed. I don't think your Rosh Hashiva has a frock and a Hamburg. I don't think so, but some of the others do. If I would be sent min hashamayim litboa el bona shel hachasidut, I probably would be wearing a shtreimel, a kaftan, and maybe white socks, like most of the Rabbeim are dressed up. I'm in full military gear. I'm wearing a uniform. You thought I'm a general. Bati litboa el bona shel milchama. It's about war. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu was asking, do you expect to win this war with Bittul Torah? It cannot be. Jews don't win wars with Bittul Torah. It just won't happen. You need Torah to win this war. It's not enough that you have the best troops. You need Torah. What does he do? Umka shel halacha. And why umka shel halacha? So let me share with you another source. Tone de Be'eliyahu, Perik Yud. And Eliyahu Novi gives understanding in Shiras Devaira, Sefer Shoftim, Yivchar Elokim Chadoshim. Magen im Yira'eh, V'romach ba'arboim elef mi-Yisrael. Arboim elef mi-Yisrael shiatzu le'milchama. 40,000 warriors go out to war. יש ביניהם זוג אחד של תלמידי חכם, ואני מציל את כולם. אשרי מי שדברי תורה מתחדשים על ידו. ואומר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא, בשבילך אני מציל את ישראל. Why דברי תורה מתחדשים על ידו? And why is it not simply אשרי מי שעוסק בתורה? מגן אם יראה, ורומח ב40,000 מישראל. The Romach and the Magen are ancient tools of war, the fundamental weapons of 1,000 years ago. The Romach is the sword, and that's an offensive weapon, which the warrior has in his right hand. The Magen is a shield, which is a defensive weapon, which he holds in his left. The Magen and the Romach were transformed 1,000 times till we got to the present-day modern battlefield. It's no longer the sword and the shield. It's infantry, artillery, special forces, armor, planes, missiles, anti-missile missiles, and anti-missile, anti-missile missiles, and cyber warfare. But every strategist or tactician knows that an army will never be victorious unless he is good in offense and defense. So the Magen and the Romach will always be the fundamentals. B'malchamto shel Torah, we have the Magen and the Romach, and that is the Maksha and the Tartzen. The Maksha attacks. He finds problems and contradictions, and he's steadily on the attack. And the Tartzen is the one to set things straight. He is the Magen. Keneged ha-Magen va-Romach shel Zdei HaKrav. We need the Magen and the Romach of the Beis HaMedrash. Ashrei mi shedivrei Torah mitchadshim al yado. You're yeshiva boys, and your yeshiva says you're great boys, and you learn very well. So how is one mechadash chiddush Torah? There's only one formula that we find in the Gemara, that we find in Tosfos, and the Rashba and the Ramban, and the Ktsois and the Nesivos. You have kashas, and every kasha breeds a teretz, and every teretz is a new chiddush in Torah. And that is why when Yehoshua ben Nun gets the message from the angel, Vayolan betachu eimek, the Magen and the Romach, Melchamto shel Torah, to give the power and the success to those that have the sword and the shield out there on the battlefield. So this is your call. Hamagen v'aromach shel Beit HaMidrash. More asmada. More malchamta shel Torah. Learn more, learn better. Daven more, daven better. This week's parsha, Avraham Avinu says, V'onochi ofar v'efa. What does that mean? Brochas Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. One of the great Amirom was Messiah Tefillah, and he said, "V'nafshi ka'ofar lechol tihiyeh." Tosfos explains, what is v'nafshi ka'ofar lechol tihiyeh? Ofar einoi mekabel klaya. Israel cannot be destroyed. Man devised means of destruction, and we could destroy everything. When an atomic bomb goes off, even a little one, like the ones that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in ground zero, nothing is left. Even steel dissipates, evaporates. It is reduced to nothing, to dust. But the dust of the earth can never be destroyed. Nobody could destroy the planet. So Tosfos says, "V'nafshi kofar lechol tiyah." We can destroy everything besides the earth. Ofar eina mekabel kloya. And we are indestructible. Kadosh Baruch Hu promised, "Ki lo yisashachach mipi zarai." We are the people of eternity, and we will always make it to the finishing line. The Marshal on the spot writes, "Va'ani shamati," very nice pshat. somewhat encouraging. V'nafshik ofar l'chol tiyah. Ma ofar? Hakol dorsim oleya, ulebesof hi doreset al kol dorseha. The earth is patient. And everybody tramples the earth. And he waits patiently. 70 years. V'im b'givura shmoinim shana. But at the end of the day, she swallows them all. And the earth is always on top. And everybody finds himself at some stage on the bottom. And that's nafshiko ofa l'chol tiyah. We are trampled throughout history. Goylo achar goyla, exile after exile. So much pain and so much suffering. But we are confident we will be zeiche to see the geula. V'hoiso ach lamala. But the sugya doesn't deal with Efer. What does V'onechi offer ve'efer mean? So let me share with you my feeling. There's a popular legend, which has nothing to do with religion. Obviously just a silly legend, like many other legends in children's books about the phoenix. So do you know what the phoenix is? It's a city in America. I think it's the capital of Arizona. But the phoenix is a bird. And the legend says that the bird, the phoenix, lives 1,000 years. And then he soars up to the heavens. He comes so close to the sun, he is parched and burned by the heat of the sun, reduced to ashes, and he's born again out of the ashes for another 1,000 years. Nice legend. The source of the legend is in Medrash Rabbah in this week's parsha. And the Medrash calls this bird hiyoımhashchor, the sand bird. Obviously, it is born from sand. And it lives 1,000 years. According to the Medrash, it doesn't fly up to the sun. But fire bursts out of his nest. It's consumed by fire. And only a kibetza remains. And it's born again for another 1,000 years. And the hiyoımhashchor is quoted in Rashi once in Shas. Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Amud Beis. We find this story. And that bird is us. 75 years ago, Hitler, Yamach Shemoy V'Zichroy, was confident that he has the final solution to the Jewish problem, and he spoke about the 1,000-year Reich. He wasn't aware that the 1,000-year, that's ours. That's the hiyoımhashchor, born again for 1,000 years, and then another 1,000, and then another 1,000. So it is we that have the 1,000-year life. And that is V'onechi ofar ve'efer. Hiyoımhashchor, born from ofar, reduced to efer, and always back again for another 1,000 years. So we are the people of eternity. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls out to us, we come closer to Him. We do tshuva. We daven more, we daven better. We learn more, we learn better. We come together. Ba'ava, v'achva, v'sholom, v'reyes. And so many people are coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tens of thousands of soldiers, maybe even more, demanded tzitzis before they go into war. I'm associated with a group that supplies mehuder diket tefillin to any soldier that takes upon himself to put on tefillin every day. Almost 3,000 soldiers, secular, never put on tefillin before, took upon themselves to put on tefillin every day, and each and every one of them got a beautiful set of tefillin with a beautiful tick on which it is inscribed, Ki malachav yitzav alach l'shmochu b'chol derochecha. And this is so moving. To me, this is so moving. Klal Yisrael coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore we are confident. We are confident. V'nafshiko ofar l'chol tiyah. We can never be destroyed. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is at our side, we have nothing to be afraid of. So I'm a Talmud of the great Kloisenberger Rebbe. And the Kloisenberger Rebbe used to say, We find this expression in the Gemara twice. Ein lanu lahishon elo alavinu shebeshamayim. And people usually quote this in such a nebuchadnezzar tone. Oy vey, we have no one to rely on, not the Americans, not the Russians, not the Arabs. We're so nebuch. Ein lanu lahishon elo alavinu shebeshamayim. The Koizah Magarebi said, no. Avinu shebeshamayim is not a mishenes kona rotzutz. We should shout out proudly, loud and clear, Ein lanu lishon elo al avinu shebeshamayim, and that's why we are confident. Yesh lanu lehishon al avinu shebeshamayim, and when He is on our side, we need no one else. We need no one else. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu cried out to us. That's an awakening call. What happened in Simchas Torah? And we rise to the challenge, and we respond. The achdus that we see in Klal Yisrael, and the chizuk that we see in Klal Yisrael, in all sectors and in all segments, and the chizuk that we should be seeing by B'nai Torah like you, should also make the special effort. Learn more than you ever did, and learn better than you ever did, and say another few kapitlach of Tehillim every day, and be'ezus Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu will help. V'lo yeshem eshoid v'sheva, Kadosh Baruch Hu yadbir oivenu tachtenu, and the Israeli troops should be victorious, and the Israeli troops and all the yeshivas and the koilelim, their tefillas and their Torah, she'aleh l'shamayim, v'tishkoi to'oretz arboam shono, v'tishkoi to'oretz ad bias goyel tzedek b'mheiro v'yomenu amen.